Okay, it looks like I can open them from here, but I won't be able to come in with you. Here goes.
In 2013, 2K Games released BioShock Infinite, the eagerly anticipated follow-up to the earlier, hugely successful BioShock games.
Fun fact, also in 2013, a hiatus for Homestuck stopped. Oh, no one else cares about that? Okay.
Infinite's story centers on a man named Booker DeWitt, a private investigator with a bloody past who takes on a mysterious assignment. Bring us the girl and wipe away the debt.
What's with people in these long, awkward pauses that are unnecessary? I mean, I may have paused awkwardly while recording, but at least I edited it out. Are you incapable of doing so?
What follows is Booker's adventure to the flying city of Columbia, where the girl, Elizabeth, has been imprisoned in a tower for her entire life. Busting her out of captivity while she busts out of her corset, Booker shoots his way across Columbia, getting caught up in all sorts of drama in the process, as the game tells players a garbage story which suggests that oppressed people are just as bad as their oppressors.
Shall we look at what Antifa does? Shall we look at what the Black Lives Matter movement does? I mean, hate to say it, but BioShock Infinite sort of has a point.
And that the truth is always somewhere in the middle. But that's much too big a can of worms for us to open in this video. Let's just focus on Elizabeth.
But that's reality. It's always somewhere in the middle. You can't go too far to one side or else you'll be biased. If you stay in the middle, you cannot become biased towards one side of the media spectrum. Or the political spectrum, I should say, is more likely.
Elizabeth possesses an incredible ability to open portals to other timelines, an ability that plays a significant role in the plot as Booker and Elizabeth hop forward and backward and from side to side in time, leaping from one version of Columbia to another, and sometimes thrusting Booker into the past or the future. So as a plot device which drives elements of the game's narrative, she's very significant.
Good job describing why that character is needed in the story of BioShock Infinite. I mean, if your point was to point out that sidekicks are not needed, then bad job. And I mean sidekicks in most games. In this game, yes, it's needed, and in most games, you technically don't need one, but still.
In gameplay terms, however, Elizabeth serves a different kind of role. That of a glorified door opener.
Yes, because she is only a glorified door opener. There's definitely nothing else in the game that she does.
There you go. As with most shooters, BioShock Infinite often puts you into situations where you can't progress until you've cleared an area of enemies. The way it frequently does this is by blocking doors to the next area that can't be opened by Booker. Only Elizabeth can do this, which she does only when all the enemies have been killed. For all of her tremendous powers, Elizabeth is reduced by the game's mechanics to doing the most basic and menial of tasks, and waiting around for her to open a door becomes a significant aspect of how players experience her.
Let me scout ahead, see if there's some way to move forward.
You know, I asked my brother who played this game, and he said that nothing like that changed how he thought about her. It seems like a lie if you would.
Of course, she performs other actions as well, sometimes tossing Booker ammo, first aid, or other useful items, or opening tears through which he can have her summon things like weapons or killer robots to help him in combat. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with the idea of characters who play a supporting role in combat situations, but Elizabeth is an example of a female sidekick who is reduced to a tool.
Have you not seen other sidekicks that are always tools? Take Robin, for example. How many times has he been a tool in the comics? I'm asking that as a legitimate question. How many times? I don't know.
There aren't gameplay mechanics that allow you to have meaningful interactions with her. She just opens doors and dispenses useful things, and her tear-opening powers are not her own, but yours to call on and control with the press of a button.
Elizabeth, a little help?
Looks simple enough.
At other times, she's less like a person and more like a sexualized slot machine tossing you the occasional coin.
Here you go.
Well, you do have to tell her where to use it. It is still her gameplay mechanic, meaning it is still part of her character. To say it is not because you have to pick where it's used is stupid. This is a normal thing when it comes to characters that you have secondary control over. It's still their character traits, but you have control of it.
As a glorified gatekeeper, Elizabeth joins a long tradition of female sidekicks, including Alex from Half-Life 2 and its follow-up episodes, and Yorda from the much-beloved Ico, whose magic is needed to activate doors, staircases, and other mechanisms that allow players to advance. Yorda also has a distinction of being the quintessential example of what I call the damsel escort mission. You know, after making...
Wait, Peach and Zelda, two characters that have time and time again proven that they are just as useful as the main character, are Are you stupid or do you ignore stuff? Because in Wind Waker, Zelda, or Tetra as she's called up until halfway through the game, is a very, very useful character, story-wise. And in Paper Mario, Peach is necessary for the story as well. Neither of these characters are just damsels, they play both parts. To just act like they are one is a lie.
3 whole videos about damsels. I'd kinda hope to never have to talk about them again. But gaming's love of using helpless women as both narrative and gameplay devices was too much for even those videos to contain. Damsel escort missions occur when a female character joins the male player character, but is largely helpless, and rather than being a clear benefit to the player, she feels more like a burden. In Ico, players free Yorda from a cage early on. She then joins Ico on this journey, and much of the game consists of solving puzzles so that Yorda, who can't make leaps or climb walls on her own, can traverse the environment. Meanwhile, players also need to protect her from the shadow monsters who sometimes try to whisk her away. Spoiler alert. Yes, in the ending cutscene, Yorda carries Ico out of the crumbling castle. But what the narrative tells us or shows us in the end doesn't undo the impact of how we experience a character through the gameplay.
This is again a falsehood because multiple characters have been redeemed in the ending arcs of games. The last cutscenes do play into what you think of the character. People's minds have been changed by the last cutscenes before. It's not something new and it's not something that happens rarely. It's very common.
Another classic damsel escort mission occurs in Resident Evil 4, where Ashley Graham, the president's daughter, has caused players tremendous frustration over the years by burdening them with the need to protect and manage her.
Oh no, one of the only characters in a Resident Evil game that doesn't use a gun, and they need to be protected because of it. I mean, that's definitely not the reason. No, it has to be because they're a damsel in distress. Definitely not because they're more passive than I am.
Whether they're presented as capable or helpless, female companions often encounter situations in which they just can't proceed on their own. Ellie in The Last of Us, for instance, is hardly a Yorda-like damsel, but when she encounters a body of water, she may as well be, and Joel has to go out of his way to get her across.
Not gonna lie, I never played this game before. I believe she can't swim, though, if you have to escort her over water, which is a character trait that she has. So you want one of the faults of a character to be removed because you don't like it. Do you not like good writing or something?
Now look, there's a lot to admire about The Last of Us, but I guarantee you nobody's favorite part of that game was helping Ellie get across the water.
If they liked Ellie as a character, they probably put up with it because it was part of her character. Because people actually like good writing, believe it or not.
A good rule of thumb is that if you spend any portion of a game carrying a female character around, it's a pretty safe bet that it at least has some elements of the damsel escort mission.
No, you're heavier than you look.
To be clear, there's nothing whatsoever inherently wrong with depictions of people helping each other in times of difficulty. If anything, we could do with a lot more narratives that focus on companionship, cooperation, and support.
Really, out of all of the games you pick The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. Alright, I'll play along with you, okay? Oh no, a couple of characters that don't have any training whatsoever when it comes to swordplay can't defend themselves. Oh no, please, call the repression, please. You are saying people going into a dungeon where swordplay is necessary qualifies as this? No. If the Vito knew swordplay and did this, then yes, you could argue that. However, saying this about a character that knows nothing about how to fight with a sword or at all is absolute trash, considering you need her throughout the entire dungeon as well.
But the models games give us rarely offer experiences in which this kind of support is truly mutual. Instead, we see a pattern of men frequently caring and helping women in situations where they're otherwise helpless. This pattern is rooted in sexist ideas about men as protectors and women as the ones who need this kind of protection.
At least 2 of the games you've shown require some form of swordplay training in order to fight in. And I guess you could argue Link had none, but at that point where the Zora Princess came into play, he's already gone to 2 dungeons, a couple of training sequences, and all that. So again, you could argue that about Link, but he knew the basics and how to fight. Zora Princess did not. I don't know about the other examples because I don't know what they're from, or I've never played them.
It's coded into the gameplay that men are the ones who kill and protect, and that women are the ones who experience moments of helplessness and need to be carried. When these female characters are of aid to the player, it's often in rudimentary ways, as a glorified door opener, or even as a more basic tool.
So far, all I've seen is children in medieval games where people you're protecting don't have any form of swordplay knowledge. I have yet to see a legitimate example of what you're saying, because usually it's an adult's job to protect a child, so it's not sewn into any form of reality that you may try and skew.
In the Ocarina of Time dungeon, inside Jabu Jabu's belly, players must carry the snobby Princess Ruto around, at one point even using her as a weight to press down a switch.
If you ask me, that's a good use for her because she's annoying.
And in Metal Gear Solid 5, you've got 4 sidekick options to take with you on missions. A dog, a horse, a robot, and a woman. Finally, female companions often function as cheerleaders, doling out little ego boosts to players for gunning down bad guys or pulling off other feats.
And I have to get you out of here. Now come with me.
Along with the glorified door opening and the damsel-like aspects, female sidekicks are there to make players feel better about themselves.
That's a sidekick thing, not a female character thing. I've played multiple games where the sidekicks are male and they just cheer you on from the sidelines. It's not something special to female sidekicks, it's something all sidekicks do.
To make them feel important and skilled.
Nine! You did it! You did it! Wow! You're so cool!
You're just trying to impress me.
Were you impressed? Got all those guys all by myself?
But these interactions are rarely depicted as mutually supportive. It's not nearly as common in these scenarios for the male player character to offer emotional support to their female sidekick, to tell her that she's doing a great job. These particular sidekicks aren't designed as characters that players can actively engage in developing a relationship with. Characters who are fully fleshed out people with their own goals and desires, that sometimes require players to compromise their own wants or desires.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure the people who were playing Ocarina of Time want to have a fun time, not an annoying time escorting that princess. But anyway, back to a serious point, not a joking point. You use, Ashley, I believe her name is, as an example. The player's goal in the game is to get her back to her father, meaning the entire goal of that game is to protect her. Players go into it knowing that, so they are prepared for whatever. So you can't use her as a good example of this. Next, Ellie, I'm pretty sure people don't want to push her across it, but they do because it's their job as her protector. You see, your logic is flawed here. People do have to do stuff they don't want to do.
This pattern of female sidekicks who serve more as gameplay devices, door openers, and ego boosts than as people is a design approach rooted in the idea of games as power fantasy. Players get to feel powerful and important, sometimes issuing orders that are obeyed without hesitation or doubt. Companion dynamics in games almost never model what equal footing, cooperation, and collaboration in a relationship might look like, but instead serve to make the player feel like the center of the world, the one in control, which is not at all a model for healthy relationships.
Oh, you're one of those people. You're one of the people who think gamers are influenced that much by games. Now, I'm going to a mini rant in this video right now because of this ideal. People who think this way have no idea what they are talking about. While yes, it has been proven that it does affect people, it is not to the way that you believe. Games have been proven to be a great stress reliever in the right settings. Me sitting down for multiple hours playing games probably not the best thing for my stress levels, but who cares? But it will not make the relationships worse unless they have an addictive personality, unless they let games consume their life like any addict will let happen. Not the best wording of the end there, but still, my point stands and you get it. The only people who let this happen are addicts, not people like me who play games because they enjoy them. It's the addicts that push this narrative, or fuel this narrative I should say, not push. It's the addicts that fuel this narrative that people's relationships are so adversely affected by games. That is not true in the slightest.
Of course, a huge number of games focus on men fighting alongside other men, and in these games, the male companions often have some of the same characteristics we sometimes see in female companions.
And that's at least 10 more confirms, Hunter 2-1, good shooting.
Yes, and I care about those characters less than I care about Elizabeth.
It's very common for male characters to compliment the player on their good shooting, or to breach a door that the player character can't open himself. However, typically these characters are presented as equal participants in the conflict. In shooters ranging from Call of Duty to Gears of War, the player's male companions are armed and active, and are portrayed as playing their part to fend off or eliminate the enemy threat. Occasionally in these games, male characters do have to protect other men, but unlike scenarios in which men protect women, these less common instances don't reinforce pre-existing cultural attitudes about men, women, and gender. Similarly, the occasional situation in which a female character protects a male one, which happens in the 2013 Tomb Raider reboot, among other games, also isn't a problem, because it doesn't work to reinforce limiting, harmful ideas about women or men that already exist in our culture.
Sorry, hun. Oh wait, I just called you hun. Sorry, I didn't mean that. I don't want to get sued for sexual assault or something because you apparently say that whenever someone calls you hun. But it doesn't work like that. You see, you use the protagonist as an example, and you use Gears of War 3 as an example, which has female characters in it, might I add. Yeah, that's right, I played Gears of War 3. What are you looking at? Don't look at me like that. But you can't even get your own facts straight. You use Gears of War 3, which has female characters in it. I'm pretty sure Gears of War and Gears of War 2 had female characters in it as well. I'm not sure. I haven't played them in a while. I need to replay them. But still, don't know what you're talking about.
In other words, we live in a culture that says, generally speaking, men should be the protectors and women should be the protected. When women function as competent companions whose skills are more or less equal to those of the player character, it can challenge these ideas. The Last of Us goes against the grain by giving us the character of Tess, a somewhat rare and refreshing example of a woman who fights alongside the male protagonist.
In other words, anybody in the end of war scenario, congrats, you played yourself. This whole idea that only men are competent enough to do this is wrong. Games will cater to their viewer base. And let's be real here. No, don't try and say it's men's fault or anything like that. More men play video games than women. That's a fact. It's not a fact that I welcome because I believe anybody can come play games, so I would like the numbers to be equal. However, it is a fact nonetheless. So they will cater to the men that play the game, and most men like playing as male characters.
And the later Gears of War games do a decent job of including female squad members who are on equal footing with their male counterparts. And thankfully, we're seeing more games that complicate and subvert the old patterns, providing players with relationships with supporting characters who don't function as mere extensions of the player, but who feel like separate individual people. The 2016 indie title One Night Stand throws players into a situation with a female character who clearly has her own feelings and her own desires, and communicating with her is a matter of trying to find some common ground for mutual understanding, not one in which the player is in total control of the situation.
Have you never played a dating sim before? Is that your issue? You've never played a dating sim? If you need some, I can give you a list. I know a long list of them. I suggest you try out Honey Pop if you haven't yet. You'll love it. You'll just love it. Note, if you're under the age of 18, I suggest you buy the Steam version. It's more censored if you buy it at all. I don't want you to, but still, if you do, buy that version.
In Left Behind, the wonderful add-on for The Last of Us, Ellie's companion Riley is not someone players can issue orders to or someone they have to protect. Riley is constantly active, often taking control of the situation, sometimes competing and being playful with Ellie, and as a result, she doesn't feel anything like the companion characters in most games, or even anything like Ellie herself felt in the original game. Instead, she feels much more like a real person accompanying Ellie on the journey. And while Trico in 2016's The Last Guardian may not be a human character, he does possess some of the characteristics we'd like to see more of in human companions in games. Asking Trico to do things isn't a simple matter of pushing a button and watching him immediately obey. He's not a simple tool, not just an extension of the player. Sometimes he's hesitant, reluctant, even frustrating, but this makes it feel more like he's a living, breathing creature with thoughts and feelings of his own.
Sorry, I can't play that then. The only thing that annoys me more than, well, people like you, is people disobeying orders, people who obviously know better than them. It happens a lot in games I play. I tell people not to do anything, they do something and they die. It's almost as if I know what's gonna happen next, and yet they still do it, despite me being right multiple times, and it annoys me. So that game would just annoy me to a non-existent point of its being. So I'm definitely not gonna touch that game. Thank you for telling me. That's a lie. People suggest I'll probably play it still.
And by taking time to pet him, you can sometimes express your connection to him in ways that fall outside of the requirements of the gameplay and the story. And crucially, Trico is often the one protecting the player, rather than the other way around. He does not exist to fuel a power fantasy, but to allow for gameplay mechanics that focus on cooperation, care, and helping each other. When supporting female characters in games don't have this kind of depth, when they exist primarily to be protected or to be ordered around, they not only reinforce harmful ideas about gender, they also fail as characters.
This entire video is complaining about character traits that they have. I think you're the one who's failing at reading into story. It's not my fault you're incompetent at your job, nor is it the game developer's fault you're incompetent at your job. But hey, what can we expect from someone who said she doesn't care about video games, she only cares about pushing her narrative? To quote you are a garbage person.
Regardless of their gender, race, class, or sexuality, a person is more than a tool. and more than a burden. And games can and should give us mechanics and stories that reflect that.
They do. As I just said, you're incompetent. You can't do your job correctly. You can't look past the surface area of these characters. You yourself have fallen for the tropes that you are against. And I say fallen because I don't know. You refuse to answer if you actually believed this stuff or not. So I will act as if you fell for it instead of you didn't, because I cannot confirm or deny that you did. But one thing remains true. You are incompetent. Well, thank you all for joining in this Cancer Fest. Now I have to stress this more than ever due to the current status of my channel's monetization. If you enjoyed this content, please do leave a like, comment, and subscribe down below. And if you want to, my Patreon is down below as well, so you can donate, and any social media where you can find me if you want to talk to me or talk about any things I talked about in this video. You can find me there. Well, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.